Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the 24th session of ICF Sunday webinar series. Today's topic is designing effective documents by using MS Word. And our speaker for today is Mr. Yatindra Joshi. So over to you, Yatindra.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you decided to join. Good typography is taken very seriously. I'm giving you an example of a very famous journal, Nature, with a very high impact factor. And a year or two ago, I think Nature, along with its centenary, probably or 150 years, I don't remember which. So they decided to redesign the journal, and it said it needs best practices in visual communication as well. So what they did, they commissioned a special font, a special typeface exclusively for Nature. And that's what they wanted it, that this flavor of the typeface. And why is it important? This is what they explain, that typically papers published in Nature have mathematical equations, formulae, Greek letters. So the font must have all those. That's crucial. And these are more specific examples, rendering in alpha, italic A, and so on. So you see, that's why it is particularly important. And the typeface they call Harding. Harding is designed to cope across disciplines and so on. So it's serious business. That's all what I wanted to. Now let me show you some quick examples of poor and better designed documents. So you could see some document somewhat like this, just a block of text. And if you introduce design to it, then you see the structure of the document becomes more apparent. You can scan it easily. Compare it with just 3 large blocks of text. Compared to that, this is airier, there's more space, it's more readable. Because no matter how well you write, no matter how good the prose is, unless people, if they are repelled by the look of the document, they are not even going to start reading it. So to draw people into your text, you need good design. Another quick example, you see, this is again a typical run-of-the-mill layout. There's a chapter 1, chapter title, whereas here it's somewhat designed. Again, you will see that lines are shorter, there is more space, chapter titles more prominently displayed, or is the whole book. So we have the book cover, its contents, and a text page. So that is what document design is, that if you are going to be happy only accepting what are the defaults Word gives you, Calibri, 11 point, and so on, then you can't go really very far. Take a legislative document, it has many sections, subsections, sub-subsections, but is designing serving it well? The same layout, now you can see it recast. It has, you see, so everything is being done by indent. There's no indent, then this indent, and it goes progressively deeper indent. So 8 depths of indent, very little typographic variation, no chunking, that is like information is not clubbed. Whereas you can see here, section numbers are displayed better. What belongs where is signaled clearly, and so on. So that's an improved layout. It has greater typographic variation and so on. So how do we actually go about this? How do we design effective documents? So we need to do this right from choosing a font, how do you format paragraphs, page size, and so on. So this is what a good, well-designed document looks like. It should have an informative cover, not only attractive, but informative. And overall look and feel should be consistent with the kind of document it is, whether it's a comic book, whether it's a popular magazine, whether it's a serious, there's a PhD thesis, and so on. So it must allow all this. The document design should also allow people to get a quick overview before they start reading whatever section that they want to choose. When I say layers of content, I mean, for instance, you take a thesis. So it may have footnotes. So the text or footnote is a second layer. The heading, the main headings will be another layer, and so on. So the document should be so designed that you can focus on any particular layer of interest to you. So that's how we would, that's the plan I have in mind. We'll start with letters. We'll see how they combine into words, words into lines, and so on. And how do you establish a hierarchy of headings. And this is all backed by good quality research. Now you see here alternative forms of numerals. And you could see that research showed that the forms at the top row were more legible than those at the bottom. So how do you decide a font? Why did it have to be Calibri? Simply because it's a default font in Microsoft Word. But then if you want your work to stand out, then you can't simply go by the sort of vanilla flavor or what Microsoft gives you. You will need to go beyond that. But for that, you need to be aware of how would you go about choosing a font. So for instance, the kind of document that you have, does it have all the characters that you need? Superscript, Greek symbols, letters, and so on. Then if it, for instance, it's for example, a dictionary or a reference book where the type size has to be small. If that is the case, then the font that you choose should be such that it is built for legible at small sizes. On the other hand, you might be designing a poster where you will require all letters to be very large. In that case, again, you will need to choose a font that is designed to be good at larger sizes. Characters that look similar, like capital I, lowercase l, numeral 1, they need to be distinguished clearly. So that may be a requirement. Maybe it's a combined work, you and your group of your authors, they're all going to be exchanging documents back and forth. In that case, you need a font that is available on everyone's system. So these may be some consideration. Now, in addition to that, there is a little more subjective element to it, what we call atmosphere value. That is the overall impression that the typeface gives you should be consistent with the kind of document that you are using. Or there may be other constraints. For instance, you may be reading it on mobile screen. So in that case, these days, in fact, you have fonts that are specifically designed for mobile screens where what we call real estate is small, unlike a large desktop. Here the font needs to be working well at fairly small sizes. So required characters, for instance, if your references, for instance, has many different names from different countries, you have Polish, you have Scandinavian names, you have French names. In that case, you will use proper diacritical marks. So your font should have those diacritical marks. Or there could be signs. These are, for instance, astronomical signs. So depending on the kind of manuscript that you have, so it could be organic chemistry, it could be musical notation, and so on, phonetics. So does the font have all those characters? So that's something you need to. Then I talked about atmosphere value. Now you see this is a degree certificate. So you see it's overall, it's a pretty conservative old style font that's used, what is called black letter or fractal, because a degree certificate is a very formal document. So imagine this invitation, if you set it in the font that I just showed you, because it's very different. So the font need to match the kind of document it is. Comic Sans, for instance, many people have very strong aversion to Comic Sans. You could see this. So there is this atmosphere value, or there is some association with fonts. So I was telling you about similar looking characters. This is called this IL1 test. You can see that some fonts do very well, some fonts do very poorly. I mean, you take Gill Sans, and it's very difficult to tell apart which is which character, whereas you see Meta or National, they do a much better job of distinguishing between similar characters. So again, if your document demands this, then you need it. For instance, let's say you are giving a lot of URLs. In that case, each letter has to be distinct because context is not an adequate clue. So small sizes, for instance, there have been fonts developed at very small size. Imagine 2-point and 3-point. It looks really very weird. Or Bell Centennial, Matthew Carter designed it for telephone books. So where space is again a constraint and it's going to be printed on rough paper and so on. So the font has to take care of all these elements. So minuscule, you see, if you magnify them, the letters really look weird, but they were not designed to be thus magnified. They were meant to be read at 2 points and 3 points. At the other extreme, you have fonts like Quarto, which is for posters and very large sizes, or fonts which are meant for directions, highway signs. So there are different fonts available for that, because the requirement that the font make on the purpose of the font is very different. So accordingly, you must choose these. Now there is two clear-cut differences. You probably know about this, that these are fonts without serifs, whereas these are with serifs. So general convention is that for text you choose fonts with serifs because they are the received wisdom is that they make the flow along in the horizontal direction smoother. Whereas for display purposes, typically sans serif fonts, that is fonts without serifs, are used, like Arial, for instance. And they differ in very small detail. You can see even capital A can have very different designs. Lowercase g, even the dot on the letter I, it could be a circle, it could be a square, it could be a triangle, it could be a diamond, whatever. So there are some good practices and bad practices. For instance, the particularly bad practice is to allow yeah, I was cut off. I don't know why. So anyway, so we were, where were we? Yeah. Yeah, we were here. We were talking about that. Yeah, so it's a bad practice because it put extra spacing between lowercase letters. It's not a good practice. It destroys the integrity of word. It hampers easy reading. So you should not put any extra space between lowercase letters. Then, so we talked about letters. We talked about words not being spaced. Now, line. How long is the line of type that you're reading? And that is crucial. The line shouldn't be too long and they shouldn't be too short either. Because this is what happens if lines are too long. This is what happens if lines are too short. So a sweet spot is about 65 characters, including spaces. It's not cast in stone, but a rough idea. Whereas you see here, I was editing this document. Average line length is 138 characters. That is simply, not many people are going to be happy reading that. Then we also need to make a choice between full justification and left justification. Now, maybe full justification looks neater, but see the cost. The cost is variable spacing between words. You can see that in some lines, the gaps between words are fairly wide. In some lines, they are fairly tight. Whereas, if you go in for left justification, okay, it looks, the right side looks ragged, but words are uniformly spaced. So that's again a decision you will need to make. Indents, how do you signal new paragraphs? Either you can signal it by para in first line indent, that's conventional, or sometimes what is called hanging or negative indent, that's another device. Or you might put extra space between paragraphs. Sorry, yeah. So here you see it's ragged right, but extra space between paragraphs, no first line indent. Line spacing is also critical, because if the lines are too close, the overall page color looks very dense. So we need to choose a judicious line spacing. In I'm sorry, the connection seems to be really very bad.
Yes, Yatindra, and one participant, she said if you can go a little slow.
Okay, thanks. I'll do that. So a crucial aspect of design, especially in technical documents, because technical documents invariably have levels of headings. You may have chapter titles. A chapter may contain several main headings. Each of these main headings may have several subheadings and so on. So this is where good designing comes in, that you must devise a hierarchy of headings so that each level stands out very clearly. The logic being that as you go up the hierarchy, the appearance differs more and more from that of body text. So that's a crucial thing. You can see there are different approaches to it. For instance, some would use simply numbers. So the more the components of a number. So let's say main headings are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the second level is, let's say, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and so on. So that is one approach. It's fairly straightforward. Besides, you can also have typographic coding. So you may use a different font. You may be using a larger font. You may be using a different alignment. So these are the devices that you have. The question is, how do you combine them and evolve a hierarchy of headings? So for instance, here you see there is a main chapter title is in all capitals. It is at the top of a page. Then the second level headings are also in full capitals, whereas the third level heading, it is in title case. So you can see 1, 1.1, 1.2.1. So here the case is used, all capitals, title case, and maybe sentence case. These are what we call run-on headings, meaning the headings don't have a separate line to themselves. Text continues on the same line as the heading. So these are run-on headings. The headings that are not particularly important, you could use run-on headings. You can change the alignment. For instance, right aligned for chapter numbers, it attracts your attention. Then here you see the line length is managed very well because the text lines are fairly short and headings are into another column, which gives them more prominence. So that could be another way you could see here. So that's one level of heading. So that is, it has a rule above, so that sets apart it from the previous block of text. Then second level heading is italicized. Third level is also italicized, but the numbers can tell you which level it is. Or here you see the indents. The main and subheadings are indented, whereas the minor heading is set flush left. So there are any number of ways. What I'm getting at is you should get into habit of examining the documents, the appearance of which you like, and then try to figure out what is it about that document that is giving it that extra edge. For instance, there's a convention more common in European and British publishers that the line that follows a heading is not indented. Subsequent paragraphs are marked by first line indents, whereas US publishers will uniformly indent the first lines of paragraphs, whether it follows a heading or whether it doesn't follow a heading. It's a matter of style. You could use alignment. For instance, centered alignment gives more prominence to the heading, but only when it is a short heading, so that it has ample space before and after. If it's a long heading, centered alignment may not work very well. A very common failing in documents is to give same amount of space before the heading and after the heading, which is really you are doing readers a disservice. Maybe easier for you, you press enter to mark the end of a paragraph, you press enter one more time to create a blank line, then you type the heading, press enter to end that heading, press enter another time to insert another blank line and start the text. So it's easy for you, but the reader sees this as a suspended midway between two blocks of text. So the spacing does not give a cue that this actually belongs to the block of text that follows. So never give equal space before and after the heading. Get rid of this habit. So that's really not good at all. And from two blocks of text, cut difference. It makes clear which belongs to what block. Always. So as I said, centered headings can work well, provided it is short. If it's long, it's not going to work. Or you can use other devices. You can use boldface, whatever. As you could see, here's a US publisher. The first line is also indented. Or you could use some ornaments, like lines, these triangles, some other decorative matter. Or increasingly, if it's a PDF, you are not going to print it, then you could use color as well. You could use color quite liberally. Now headings, again, you need to be consistent. Now here you see, these are identical levels of headings, whereas this follows a title case. This doesn't follow a title case. This makes a sentence case. So again, it comes back to title case. No, that is not correct. Since they're all the same level, then either you must make this T and K also cap, or you must make this G and C lowercase. Likewise, headings stand by themselves. They don't need any punctuation after that. Not a full stop, not a colon. It's totally redundant. Get rid of this habit. If the heading has a line to itself, don't put any punctuation after that, unless of course it's like heading is a form of a question. So that's a different matter. The run-on headings, there's another thing that you need to keep in mind. Now run-on headings, as I said, text continues on the same line. What you need to do here is you need to repeat that heading, because you see the heading is in bold, so readers may just scan the headings or they may scan the text. So you don't need any punctuation because this is bold, this is normal, so it should work quite well. But what is important is that the wording of the text and the heading should be the exact same. So social impairment, that's fine. But here, the heading says occupational functioning, whereas the run-on heading says occupational impairment. Why? It needs to be the same. Not only that, you should avoid pronouns to start these headings. So the heading is extra-intestinal manifestations, and then you start the paragraph with saying these. No, that is not right. You must repeat the heading. Extra-intestinal manifestations are common to both, you see. So don't use these, but repeat the heading, because readers may be scanning the heading separately and the text separately. If you are using tables, then ensure that they are all top aligned, not in this way. It must the top line they must all align. Then there are other things like, it depends again, if you are working for publishers, that then you are not going to be working in A4. You may have other page sizes, DMI, Octavo, Quarto, Royal, Crown, whatever. Whereas if you are typically working for companies, or especially European or Indian companies, they will go for A4. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. And it matters because, excuse me, I'm actually in a meeting. Could I take this call later? Yeah. So, see, the size does matter. So you typically use A4. That's how this whole system works. That A0 is the parent size. If you fold it once, you get two A1s. You fold that once, and so on. So, but what is crucial here is that if the default US size is 8.5 by 11, so it is slightly broader, but also slightly shorter. And because Microsoft Word is a US product, the default is usually US letter, 8.5 by 11 inches, whereas we are going to be taking printouts on A4 sheets. So you must make that change. So now let's come to refined typography. What is refined typography? The word text comes from Latin textus, that's cloth. So the color of the page that you see should be as uniform as possible. Then you must use proper characters, a degree sign, multiplication sign. We'll come to that in a minute. Heading should be clearly signaled. Now, this, of course, is immaterial when you are working on an electronic document, but otherwise, a simple test of a well-designed document is you print it back to back and hold it against light and see whether the lines match up. Carefully designed documents, you will see this. Sloppily designed documents, you won't. You don't need to use too many typefaces. 1 or 2 should be fine. Then in numbers, you have at least 3 kinds of numbers. So one is lining numbers, where they are like capital letters. Each number is of the same height, where typically they are used with all capitals. Typically they are used in headings. Whereas in the running text, good typography favors non-lining numerals. So some numbers go below the baseline, some numbers go up, because they blend better with lowercase letters. That's the idea. If you use capitals, then also you need to space them out. So let's come to, I started with this question. Now you see the difference here, that the first version is what I described, that you typed M, then you typed 2, you selected it, and you made it superscript. You can see the difference in color. The second version, the color of the letter and superscript, it's even. That is refined typography. Now, how do you get this? You go to character map, and you will see for most fonts, at least superscript 2 and superscript 3 will be provided separately. So you go to character map, select this and copy it. Or you could use the keystroke combination. So Alt 0178 will give you the proper superscript 2. And if you don't have a separate numerical keypad, you could use this notation. You could use B2. So just type B and then type 2 and then type Alt X. If you are using Windows, that is. So the moment you type Alt X, it will convert that B and 2 into proper superscript 2. Likewise, multiplication sign. Now, this is not a multiplication sign. You cannot use the letter X, whether it's capital or lowercase, as a multiplication sign. There is a proper multiplication sign. As you could see the difference, there are no serifs, and the 2 arms cross at their geometric center. Whereas with most letters, they will cross at a point slightly above the geometric center. So you must use the proper multiplication sign. Small caps, that's another hallmark of good design. You have, for instance, the same way you will type ICF in lowercase letters, select it, and go to font menu and choose small caps. This is what you get. Whereas here you see these are what we call true small caps. That is, their color is the same as the surrounding text. The form, the shape is that of capital letter, but the weight, the thickness of the stroke is more like lowercase letters. Those are what we call true capitals. You may not get in all fonts. In some fonts you do. So how do you do that? Now you see here, Linux Libertine is one of the fonts that has true small caps, as you could see here, A, B, C, D, all the way here. So essentially what you do is you select the small cap that you want, copy and paste. Likewise, take a look at this ligature. We'll come to that in a minute. So now it's not that every font will have true small caps. If your font doesn't have it, best not to go in for true small caps at all. And in addition to using true small caps, you need to space them out slightly. That again is a convention of good typography. As you could see here with Chicago Manual. These are small caps, but you see the letters are slightly spaced out. Now, how do you do that in Word? That is where you do it. So you go to font menu, advanced, choose spacing, choose expanded, and try different spacing, 1.1.2, 1.9, 3, depending on font size and so on. Then you will see that the letters appear slightly further apart. So you must use true small caps and you must space them out slightly. That is how you do it in Microsoft Word. You will also come across these two terms, kerning and tracking. Now, kerning, you take, for instance, the pair capital T followed by small a. Now, because capital T has this overhang of the top arm, it pushes the lowercase a little away from it. And that space then looks little odd, little extra. So kerning, the moment a combination like capital T followed by small a comes in text, kerning will push that T little closer to the small a. That's called kerning. So you have many such pairs, and a font designer keeps this in mind and uses appropriate spacing. Whereas tracking refers to what I demonstrated just now. That is, you space out letters within an entire word. So that's tracking. Then another good sign of refined typography is ligatures. Now you see here, some combination of letters, FF, FI, FL, you have separate characters. These are called ligatures. As you could see here, this is a separate character. You see that cross bar is continuous, whereas here you can see the small gap here. Likewise, this F and I, because the bowl of F and the dot of I are too close. So here where they've been combined as a separate character. These are called ligatures. And you have them, common ligatures are these. Some fonts we have even more ligatures, but these are quite common. Now again, how do you get them? Take for instance Linux Libertine. So this is one way of getting it, that you individually select, copy and paste, but that's too tedious. Now depending on which version of Word you are using, you have this option also. Again, go to Font Advanced, Open Type Features, Ligatures, Standard Only, Number Spacing. As I said, you can specify that old style number should be used. Then if the typeface has them, Word will automatically use old style numbers. Number spacing. Number spacing refers to, let's say, number 0 to 9. Now they could be either monospace, like what would appear in a typewriter font. Each numeral, whether it is a fat 8 or 6, or a lean 1 will occupy the same amount of space, whereas proportional numbers, 1 will not occupy as much space as 8 or 6 and so on. So you can enable this automatically. You should go to font menu and choose this if you want to do it. Then simple things like quotation marks. Now you see this is a typeset text, but it uses inch marks. These are not quotation marks. You must use proper quotation marks. So turned inwards or outwards depending on that. Don't use prime and double prime or mark for feet and inches, but use smart quotes. Capital letters, again, it is not a good idea in terms of readability to have too many capital letters just too close together. Either space them out or use lowercase letters. All caps makes it difficult to read. When you set words in italics, this is again a good practice. When you are choosing italics, when you select this, also include the space before italics start. So italics should include a space before italics start and not after. Why? Because in italics, the letters slant to the right. So if you don't include the space before the italics, which will be normal space, the gap between these two words will be a little too wide. So that's why it's a good practice that if you set everything, include the space before, but not space after. So some tips here. If you are going to be using A4, then change it in Word and your printer specifications to A4. Get rid of Times New Roman, get rid of Calibri. There are many good fonts developed and they're available to you. For instance, if you have Windows 8.1 or later, you will have Sitka, one of the best, most readable typefaces developed. Even Georgia is so much easier to read Georgia on screen because it was designed for screen. I included Linux Libertine because it's one of the few freely available fonts which has a wide range of characters. It has true small caps, it has ligatures, it has proportional numbers, and so on. I would say prefer left justification because it gives you smoother word spacing. See, one of the things that Word lacks is Word has no control over spacing between words. I mean, there's a workaround, but typically in more sophisticated packages, whether it's InDesign, whether it's CorelDRAW, whether it's PageMaker, whether it's LaTeX, it allows you to specify what is your ideal word spacing. So you define that as 100%, but you can also instruct the program that the program can take liberties and stretch spacing between words to, let's say, 130 or 140%, or squeeze it to 70 or 75%. But Word does not give you this feature. If you want to overall tighten the spacing between words, there is a simple workaround. What you do is you use the find and replace feature. So you go to find, what do you want to find? A space. Now, if you have used, let's say, 12-point font throughout, so the space will also be in 12 points. So what you do is you instruct the program, find all word spaces in 12 points and replace them with 10 points or 11 points. So that will give you an overall tightening of word spaces, but it's a crude device because Word simply lacks that facility. Especially the heart of Word's formatting is format paragraph menu. So that is where you should focus. Try to explore this format paragraph menu in all its possibilities. Pour over it, try it out, because most of Word's formatting is in format paragraph menu. For instance, if you want to start a new chapter, which is starting on a new page, and your previous chapter has ended, let's say, halfway down the page. So don't keep pressing enter again and again till the cursor moves to the next page. No, you should choose break, page break. So anytime you find yourself hitting the same key again and again, pause and figure out that there has to be a better way of that. At times, of course, Word cannot deliver you the results that you want. You will need to go in for a page layout software, but you can do lots of things with Word. That's the whole point of this talk. But there are ways in which page layout software are superior. Hyphenation, for instance, you get some weird word breaks because words hyphenation and justification function is not really very good. And all these are, of course, traditional practices, but now we also have research to back them up. So this was a simple experiment that participants were exposed to two blocks of text. Now, one block of text followed all these refinements that I've been talking about, whereas another block of text was set run of the mill, no refinements, no nuances, no finishing touches. And then they recorded participants as they were reading, and they found that when participants were reading non-refined version, they frown more. And after reading those blocks of text, they were given some cognitive task. And again, the researchers found that readers exposed to better typeset text actually perform better on the cognitive task simply because probably they were not as tired. So that's research for you. So lastly, I want to end with some resources, like how do you identify font? There's this font squirrel you can use, or there is Identifont. So what Identifont does is it keeps asking you a series of questions. Depending on the letters that you have available, it asks you these questions and finally makes a tentative identification. Says that, okay, your font is probably Georgia or Garamond, whatever. Then this website is particularly good because it deals with what you can achieve with using word processing packages like Word. So you can have all this, what I've been talking about, word spaces, ellipses, math symbols, all these grids of numbers. Or Ellen Lupton's website, Thinking with Type. That is also a good website to get into to grips with this subject. Line length, again, there's some research on this. So these are some resources. This may be an overkill for you. It's an exhaustive volume, maybe an overkill, but there are other good books. Why Fonts Matter, Type Rules. Felicity's book is outstanding in its detail. It will really help you to set good quality type. What Cadway does is it uses what is called reverse engineering. That it shows you how you can deconstruct well-designed documents. This is Matthew Buttrick's website, the Practical Typography. It's by the same person. And this is a very small booklet, about I think 32 pages, but will explain the basics very well. You could see all these are dealt with in this simple booklet. This is dated, but yet that good advice, guidelines for document designers. So then there is Simplification Center in England. They have come up with good publications, quite relevant to what we have been talking about. They are free download. You can take a look at them. How do you choose a font? What makes a good document? Here are the bibliographic details of all these. I'll be happy to send this file to you if you just email me. I'll be glad to share this with you. And now over to you with questions.
Thanks, Jatin, for a very enriching presentation. Divya had a question about superscript. So, Divya, can you please ask your question?
Yeah, sure. What was the question?
Yeah, sir, you mentioned that we should be giving the superscript from the character map. So I wanted to
Yes, yeah.
know how is it different from Control Shift plus keys? Because I have been doing it since I started copy editing in 2004, but nobody
Okay.
told me that this was not the correct format and it was not required. So I just wanted to know
No,
what's the difference between, and this is
okay.
also applicable to other symbols for which we have been using shortcuts, Control Shift C,
Yeah,
Control
sure.
Shift V, and
See
Control
the
Shift
shortcuts that you.
minus.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you see the shortcuts that you are using for like n dash or m dash or other specific characters. Will be no difference because what you are doing is you are simply using another way to key map, character map, and much more efficient way. That's true. But about specific question about superscript, what I would recommend is you try this out for yourself. That type these characters, choose a very large font, go it for like 60 points or 72 points so that the difference will be clear to you. And let's say we are talking about superscript 2. So you type superscript 2 with whichever method that you have been using, and another superscript 2 just by the side of it, using either pasting it from the character map, and then see if you see any difference. Because ordinarily you will see that color the color of the proper superscript 2 or 3 or whatever will be exactly the color of the surrounding text. Whereas if you are simply using formatting, that is, you will select the letter number 2 and make it a superscript, you will find that it is lighter than the surrounding text. So try it out for yourself and see where it takes you.
So in that case, if both the files, both the tools, one given from the Control Shift plus key and the other given from character map. So when it comes to XML conversion of the file, does it make a difference? Are the typesetters going to face any problem if we are giving it from character map versus that Control Shift plus key?
Well, I'm not too sure because I'm not as well versed with web design as you are. But one thing I can tell you, that if you have chosen the codes, for instance, the code for superscript 2 is Alt 178. So if you have used with code, then even if you transfer, let's say, from PowerPoint to Word or Word to Corel Draw, the correct superscript 2 will remain. Whereas if you have used 2 with format, selecting it and making it a superscript, it may lose that formatting when you change from one software package to another. So that is something you will need to experiment.
Okay, but in that case, there is a method by which we can also copy the formatting of a particular letter, and when we are copying it from one document and pasting it in another document, it can retain the formatting. This can be done by Control Shift C, that we are copying the formatting, and when we are pasting it using Control Shift V, the formatting will be retained. So I don't think that would be a problem.
Possibly, I'm not really sure. It's something that you will need to just try it out and see what works. And as I said, there is nothing really wrong in using ordinary superscript 2. That is why I'm saying this is refined typography. In most cases, you won't need it. You may not have the time to do this. Your customer will be indifferent to this. So it's up to you. If you really want to do that, you should do it.
Thank you, sir.
Not at all.
Kaneer is asking about thin space. Like when we used to work on hard copy, we used to mark for thin space. So
Okay.
she's asking now that we work online, how do we insert that thin space?
Oh yes. In fact, if you go to word insert symbol, special characters, either there you will find multiple spaces. The other way simply is that you choose a non-breaking space. So that's alt 176 or what? Okay, yeah, choose non-breaking space and then adjust the font size. For instance, I'll give you a very relevant example. Let's say we are typing a ratio. So something was, let's say 2:1. So you would type 2, you will use colon, you will type 1. But ideally you need a little bit of spacing on either side of the colon. But if you put space there, ordinary space, that is too much of space. So then the solution is you type on either side of the colon non-breaking space and then select that space. And if you are using, let's say, text size 12 point, make the space maybe 4 point or 6 point. So you can have thin space, thick space, mid space, hair space simply by choosing a non-breaking space and changing the font size.
Okay, thank you so much.
Not at all. Yeah, 178. Yeah, that's non-breaking space code. Alt 178. Yeah.
So do we have any more questions? Jyotirmoy was asking about some resources, but you gave so many resources at the end of your presentation.
We have enough resources now. More than enough.
Good. I'm happy
But I'll write to you, Yatin sir. What's your email?
Yeah, please.
Email, sir. Email, sir. Email.
Yeah, it's simply my name with a dot between the first name and the last name @gmail.com.
Okay. Thanks.
So yatindra.joshi@gmail.com.
Right.
Please
Thank
write.
you.
I'll be happy
I'll write to
to
you.
respond. Sure.
Next Sunday session is on lists, but we will be going ahead with that session only if the
Yeah,
participants send some
because I
examples.
definitely need examples. Yes. Yeah.
Because till now only Kaniz has sent some examples, others have not shared.
yeah.
So unless we have some raw material to work with, the session will have to be.
Okay. So in that case,
So that
now I have a question for the audience. That to what extent you think this will be really applicable in your work? I mean, to what extent your customers require you to even format or design the documents?
So I think this gives me an idea, but what I am actually looking for is I do a lot of fiction. So, what are the kind of ways one can make the, printed copy look good? And sometimes the layout people, you got to know a bit about fonts and stuff yourself. See, the layout people, they know quite a bit, and they have their templates because they work across the board with different publishers. But
Right.
if you as an editor don't know too much about fonts, then sort of you can't really interact with them, or if I want to use this word, advise them, or that
Yeah,
sort of
quite.
things. That's where
No,
I
in fact,
often got stuck. Right. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's my kind of need in when I think of fonts and typography and stuff like that.
Because in fact,
when you're-
I have always believed that after all, nobody knows the document as intimately as a copy editor.
Yeah, in a
So
sense.
copy editors are in fact best placed to take care of design because they know intimately the ins and outs of the document.
Yeah, sort of. And there's also there are nowadays readability in the senses like older generations. They find some smaller fonts
Difficult to read. Yes,
but I have been told, and often I'm told, "Nahi sir, koi nahi. There are these fonts which are good enough, and these fonts can be used, and wo pad sakte sab koi." So, and in the self-publishing thing, sometimes you have clients who want, I am kind of unable to advise on fonts at all. That's why I've been wanting to kind of pick up a few sort of, what should
Sure.
I say?
In
Can't
fact,
be a master. That's how it is, yeah.
let me tell you, because there are specific fonts designed for dyslexics, designed for visually impaired. So they put extra emphasis on legibility.
Huh.
So maybe you would be able to, make use of some of those fonts.
So that's how my interest in the fonts comes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Sure.
Gururaj here. I just want to answer to your question. Is Times New Roman is not okay. Maybe you didn't exactly use that word, but I read it somewhere that it's a least creative font that people still use. Okay.
Yeah, because you see, I'm glad you asked. See, the point is, you see, Times New Roman was designed for London Times. So it was designed for a newspaper where space is at a premium. Point number one. Point number two, it was designed for a newspaper which is printed on newsprint and typically at high speeds. So these were some of the constraints. And that we are talking of Times New Roman, which made its appearance in 1932 or thereabouts. There has been some minor changes, but another problem that occurred with digitization of Times New Roman was the Times New Roman that you see in most software packages was digitized with 20-point size. The proportions of these are a little odd. Nowadays, so when there was no option, I can understand you going with Times New Roman. But now I really don't see the logic. You are not printing a newspaper. You are not printing it on newsprint. You are not, and you are in like 21st century. Why should you use a typeface that was designed for a much different environment?
Ironically and unfortunately, some of the universities still mandate that the thesis has
I agree.
Times New Roman 12 font size with line spacing.
In fact, again, I must have said this earlier. Try this simple experiment. Take any page from whatever document that you are editing, assuming that it is in Times New Roman. Select the entire page and simply change from Times New Roman to Georgia. Don't change the point size, don't change the alignment, nothing. And you see how easy it is to read on the screen, because Georgia was designed for screen reading.
Okay, so I have a question. Joshi. So, what's your personal opinion on Comic Sans?
Well, in my work, I'm never required to use it, and I really don't see why people should, go to either extreme. Like people say, I just can't stand Comic Sans, or people who say, I just love it. I mean, I would say that there are many other factors that you need to take into account rather than these outright personal prejudices or likes.
Why the hatred against it? I've never really been able to understand.
What?
Why the hatred? You refer to the cartoon that you showed us.
Yeah. I'll tell you why the hatred. It is, to my mind, it is something to do with the balance between formality and informality. It's like, you're working for Wall Street, you wear pinstripe suit and jacket and tie. If you're working for a West Coast company, you go in sneakers and shoes. These are different cultural norms. So Comic Sans looks too frivolous and informal to some people's taste.
I think it is also like taking a moral high standard against something, to prove that you are classy and, superior.
But Comic Sans is not really a classy. I mean, I can understand
I'm not saying it is classy.
Gaudi old style or...
No, I'm saying that people who hate Comic Sans, they are classiness and superiority by showing that by saying that Comic Sans
right, yes, that's right. Yeah, I get you. Yeah, so it's more of a mindset. In terms of functionality, I can't really have any argument about that.
What alternatives would you recommend for Georgia?
Well, now Sitka you have. If you have Windows 8.1 or later, you have Sitka. That is pretty good. Personally, I like Linux Libertine because it also gives me all the characters that I need, all range of, and it is free. Lucida Sans, Lucida Fax, what I have been using for his PowerPoint presentations is Lucida Fax. Again, it's a good, clear typeface that you would use. Typically go in for those which have names end in Pro, like Garamond Pro, which will give you a much wider range of characters. Mercury is another one I would suggest as a good substitute for Georgia.
And these work across computer.
Yeah, these are, if they are open type, that is when you look at your font folder, if you see the name of the font with the letter O, so that's an open font. It will work with Windows as well as with Mac. But TrueType may not work with Mac, so that way. But these days, most fonts you get are open type fonts, so they will work across platforms.
And what font would you recommend for scientific text, one that uses Greek letters and symbols?
In fact, again, for instance, if you look at fonts that are used by large STM publishers, most of them will give you the characters that you need. There are other special applications. For instance, if your text is going to be heavy in numbers, so there is one is what is easily available is Franklin Gothic, which has really very clear numerals. Then there is Excel, which was specifically designed for numbers. So you might want to set all the data tables in Excel, because it's again very clear numerals that you get with Excel.
Yeah, I just realized that I don't have a pen handy. Right, thank you very much.
Oh, not sure. That's fine.
Sir, I have another question regarding the font that is preferred for formal documents such as reports, or it may be business reports or personal reports, but kind of reports that looks better when taken a printout, and as well as it looks good on the screen also. Apart from that, I would also like to know the preferred font for resumes and cover letters, all those formal things, because they are meant to be for online as well as for print purposes. So I would like to know that. Thank you.
So the question is, broadly, I would say that for these kind of documents that you mentioned, I would prefer a serif font rather than a sans serif font, because there is this divide between formality and informality. Now within that, because this again is such a large group, then probably it will also to do with what is the age group that you are applying, what is the domain in which you are applying. But safer fonts, as I said, Georgia or Sitka or even Garamond, if you like a little bit of style, Garamond is a good workable font, but it should be a serif font and ideally not too funky, depending on again the domain in which you are applying. But in fact, I can send you a link to a research paper that specifically studied whether the decision to call candidates for the interview based on their resume, and they clearly discern an effect of the typeface. So it is important. Your concern is quite right. Another consideration is, let's say you are working for a client and the client has certain branding. So that could be another way of choosing that your company may even have some like default fonts that the company uses. So in that case, you should go by those fonts.
Okay. So it means the days of Arial and Calibri have gone.
Are over. Absolutely. Yes. You have such a wide choice and so much better design font, and which have kept pace with technology. For instance, now Google has many fonts that are free, and they are designed keeping in mind that it is not always going to be read on paper. In fact, very few people would be reading documents on paper rather than they will be reading it on screen or even on their cell phones. So the fonts more recently developed take this into account, and the letters are accordingly designed and spaced.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Yeah, Yatin, which font is best suited for fiction novels? That Mirja Sharma wants to know that.
I can again refer to her in a very interesting article I was reading. This is the person who designed John le Carre's Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy for a book club. So that book club, it had to be specially designed edition. And he goes into great detail of how he designed the book, keeping in mind the overall gray mood of the novel. So it will give you very good insights into the fonts that are used in fiction. I can send you a copy of that article.
So, can you share those links here on the chat? Because many, I would be interested in both the things that you just now mentioned.
I'll try, because actually chat is more or less blocked to me because I hardly ever use a cell phone. But I'll try.
No, I'm sorry. I meant chat here on the Zoom meeting on the side. Or otherwise, whatever is comfortable for you.
No, which links you mean which are there in the presentation?
No, I meant you just now spoke when you were responding to Nija Sharma's question. You said about your research, and then previously also for Divya, you said there's another research.
Oh, okay. So two things. The one which I referred to just now, but the novel, no, there is no link. I have the document, so I can scan it and send you in PDF.
Okay.
About the other research, yes, I can send you a link. Just email me, I can send you a link.
Great.
That's not a problem
Right.
at all.
Thank you.
And Nirja also wants to know what good typography is to be able to work with a typesetter.
Sorry, what?
What good typography is to be able to work with a typesetter?
What good typography is to work with a typesetter?
Yeah.
If you're working with a typesetter, then see, typesetter, I would say, unless you give precise specifications, then because typesetter will only do what you want the typesetter to do. So which means if you really want to take that trouble, if you want to brief the typesetter, or if you want to give detailed specifications, then it means that work that you will need to put in will be much more. If you are prepared to do that, then it's for instance, let me just share a screen. I will. So this is the kind of details that you will need to give the typesetter if that is what you want. If you want to have very careful page design. So I'm just sharing it with some design I recently worked on, So if you want to do that, typesetter will be happy, because then the typesetter is not required to make any particular judgment. You are simply giving very detailed blueprint, and typesetter is following that. But it will need all these specifications. That's the point I'm making.
Thanks, Jatin, for sharing these. These are actually I would say, typesetting specs. And
right, yeah, design specs, yes.
Yeah. So although we should know what they mean, we are not exactly required to create these.
Yeah, but then if you are instructing a typesetter, then maybe. So as I said, it depends on the nature of your job. If you are going to be designing a document, then you need to do it. If not, you leave it to whoever is doing the design.
Yeah. And Yatir, will you also elaborate on what kind of samples people need to send for the bulleted list session? Some clarity on that.
A sample of any list, which will be numbered, maybe unnumbered, whatever. So all I need is the list itself, plus any sentence that introduces the list. That's it. In any form, you can send me a screenshot, you can send me a Word file, whatever is convenient. Screenshot should be fine, so you are not really transmitting any text. I can make do with screenshots. I'm fine with those. That will serve my purpose.
So I do hope the participants will be sharing the inputs, because only then the session will go ahead. Because how to deal with list, it's a very important and interesting thing, because there are so many aspects, like what words
it
to
is.
use, what words to use to introduce the list, what should be the end punctuation of that the
Quite.
sentence that
Yes,
is
yes.
introducing.
Capitalization. Yeah.
Yeah, capitalization, and
Yeah. So I will need samples. Yeah,
what
quite.
punctuation you need at the end of the
Yes,
list. And if you have
yes, yeah.
multiple lists within an article,
Yeah.
or
Nested list. Yeah.
maybe even in tables, then what all you need
Yeah.
to do,
True.
what sort of consistency has to be there.
Quite. Yes, yes.
So
Okay, so
they are
sir,
responding in the text box that they will be sending the samples.
Okay.
And Yatindra has already shared his email ID. It's yatindra.joshi@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Yes, Surit, you had a
The
question.
unedited list. Yes, yes.
so I was wondering if you would be interested in doing a sort of a course on what you need to tell your typesetter.
What you need to?
Tell your typesetter. Say you want to produce a document on a client's behalf, and it needs to go to a typesetter. What is the brief you should send the typesetter? The client is assume that the client is not competent to instruct their typesetter.
So the client has asked you to design the document?
Not specifically, but for instance, in many environments, what happens is that the client contracts with a copy editor and with a typesetter, and they are not competent to brief either the copy editor or the typesetter. So the copy editor design their own brief. So I have my own brief, so to speak. In some cases, I do the style for the client. And I was thinking of, I mean, this environment is very common, right? Most clients do not know how to instruct their typesetter. So you could
yes,
it as a service, as an ad service. You could this is basically your selling proposition that I will also develop a style sheet for your typesetter so that your documents come out looking great. So what would brief include? Is it possible?
Okay. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that. Surely. This seems quite interesting, and it is my cup of tea. So I would like to try my hand on that. Yeah. How do you brief typesetters?
Sure. Quite aware of that.
Yeah.
The other point is that in the list of resources, there's a glaring omission. The book that you wrote in 2002, I think to be there. And when is the second edition coming out?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm hoping to publish it in the next 6 months.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I hope you'll let us know so that we can buy a copy.
Oh yes, yeah, most sure, certainly, yes. If I have few customers in hand, nothing like it.
You have more than one.
All right. Sure. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Yatin, for a great session, and we will see you next week at the same time, 11 a.m.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yes.
And before that, like on Saturdays, we have the ICF travel series. If you want to take a break from editing, just want to refresh and relax, so we will have Brigadier Hirak Kar, who went on a motorcycle journey and on a Java motorcycle. So that was something he undertook in 1971, and then he wrote a book called Riding Pillion.
Okay.
So that is something that should be interesting, and I hope the participants will join that session also. It's on Saturday at 4 p.m.
Okay.